I think Maryland stands strong
And when this year started, unfortunately, I got a lot of racism about it.
because we did three big things that relate to what you're talking about right now. Okay, well, first of all, again, the big ugly bill.
Guys, thank you so much for the support, for the help, and also just everyone who's excited to for this podcast to launch. Okay, so I'm gonna jump straight into it. Today, we're talking to Jason Avila. He's the director of the Latino Legislative Caucus. He is going to bring us insights of what's happening here in Maryland. And let me just give you a quick teaser of what we're talking about. We're talking about this specific program called 287G that helps ICE and the police work together. What does that look like? And how the bills that they're passing are helping and protecting people that look like me and just people of color in general. So yeah, look, the conversation gets really, I would say, hot waters a little bit. You know, we get a little bit deeper what's happening here in Maryland. I would love for you to learn about what's going on and how we can protect ourselves, how we can be ready with certain things. And yeah, just kind of get a little bit of insight of what's happening in Maryland. So look, I don't want to bore you with my intro. Let's just get straight into it. Let's have this conversation. Tell me what you guys think afterwards and who we may want to have next. Thank you so much. On with the show.
I love it.
There's been many times that I have, created content and I just kind of been like a little bit everywhere. But this time I'm like, all right, I got to lock in. We have the right people in place and, just the right people to talk about, you know what I mean? And something to talk about really, especially this year has been like a really, really crazy year.
Definitely.
I mean, from before the whole election to like now to where we are and to like just everything. And I had the privilege to meet you last year at an event. I think it was like Delegate Diana Fernell event, right? A Good Intentions event.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think she was just like, "Hey, you guys got to talk" or something like that, and then we kind of kicked it off. And honestly, I was really impressed. I was even really impressed with the what was it? The event that you had, the Latino Caucus. What was it? A gala or something?
The gala that we do for Hispanic Heritage Month. Yeah.
Okay.
That was a big one.
Is that happening this year again?
Fingers crossed. Yes, we're working on it right now. That's another thing that is in the books. Again, Hispanic Heritage Month is literally right around the corner, so it's like all hands on deck right now.
Yeah. What is it? Like August, October?
So it's between September 15th to October 15th. Unfortunately, because we usually like to get a good venue, it tends to impact with like weddings and other events that people are doing where people are like suddenly trying to get all the nice venues.
Yeah.
So it's definitely right now a battle of
Like
getting
who-
what
Getting a location
Yeah.
first. Yeah. It's always comes down to the location. But man, I'm looking forward to that. Dude, you're like 20, bro. You got a really interesting position, dude. Like you're making moves. Tell me a little bit more of like your story. How did you even get here? You mentioned you kind of fell on it. Like, talk to me a little bit more about that, dude.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I do serve right now as the executive director for Maryland's Legislative Latino Caucus. Kind of goes without saying, though, that of course these are all my opinions, nothing reflecting on the agency.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I got into the role through a very, I guess, interesting domino effect. I grew up, I was born and raised in the Prince George's County area. Specifically, I live around like the Riverdale, Hyattsville area.
Okay.
And, it's a very high Latino community. And so living in a community like that, you see, the ins and outs of like what everybody goes through, what it's like to be, a Latino.
I grew up there.
There you go. Exactly. So you get it.
I get it. I grew up in Ladley Park, Hyattsville, Lanham, like, dude,
There you go.
Lewisdale, like,
There you go.
that entire area. Yeah.
But, seeing in those communities, you also saw a lot of the fear that people lived in, unfortunately. And, especially as certain administrations came in, how that fear sort of impacted people. And that motivated me to want to major in law and criminal justice, which is still the path that I'm trying to take now. And it also made me want to get involved in something around like helping the community.
Okay.
Originally, the first thing I did was an internship with the FBI. It's a very short-term internship that I did with them over in the Baltimore office. It was really cool experience. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, that's very intense.
Did you
stuff.
have like a whole little badge or like something? Yeah, I'll be rocking that joint anywhere. Like,
listen, they give you the badge and they give you the full like high security treatment. They're like, you can't bring your phone. They pat you down. They take you through like a whole. It's a whole thing every single time.
So that's in DC, right? You got to drive down to DC.
So that one was in Baltimore at the field office. They have a field office over in Baltimore.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a really nice office. And I had that privilege of working there for a little bit, but it wasn't really my calling. Again, ultimately, I mean, that
Yeah.
is technically, I guess, falls under law enforcement. And, as a person of color, it really wasn't what I was feeling, especially with a lot of what
Yeah.
they were saying. And so, I was looking into other opportunities to just be out and sort of help the community. And in that, I got a text from my dad. My dad is a lifelong listener to this very prominent Latino radio station in the
Okay.
area called Radio America.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
Radio America. Everybody
Okay.
loves Radio America. But so he,
I was like either that one or El Sol.
as yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like either one, either one. Yeah.
But he's a faithful listener of Radio America, and by proxy, I've listened to it as well. And somebody that's always on there every Monday without fail is Delegate Jocelyn Peñamonic,
Really?
who currently serves as the Health
Okay.
and Government Operations Committee chair. And I mean, she has been there every single time, like
Dang.
for years. I think it's like almost 20 years at this point that she goes on the program
Okay.
every single Monday. And I at this time I was still in community college, and she put out an announcement that she was looking for people to participate as staff in her office for the upcoming legislative session.
Dang.
I
Okay.
mean, I was pretty excited when my dad shared that info with me, and I was like, you know what, let's
Why
apply.
not?
Let's
Yeah.
see what happens. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens. And after we got in contact with each other, I got in contact with their office. They were like, come in, let's do the interview. And after the interview, it was a very eye opening experience. Again, the delegate is very wise, especially being in the political world for so long.
Yeah.
But afterwards, she was like, you know what? I think that a role here may not be the best option. I have another opportunity that opened up with the Latino Caucus, and at the time, even I wasn't fully aware what the Latino Caucus was. I wasn't even fully sure what a caucus was. So little by little, I also had to learn that information, and I was so impacted by just the huge organization that existed and its impact on the state politics. And through the grace of God and being able to do that, I was able to interview for that as well. And after a couple of conversations with leadership, it was a match, and I was able to take on the role.
Nice. And they were like, here you go, position. Now, I do want to ask, what is the caucus? What is Latino Caucus? Because I was just mentioning, like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, dude, I'm going to have the Latino Caucus, dude, right there, and the director, and blah, blah. And I was like, did you know there's a Black caucus, too? And he was like, well, he's Black. So he was like, no. He was like, what? That's a thing? And I was like, yeah, dude, like, a whole thing. So I feel like a lot of people don't really know what a caucus is, and I really didn't know until I really met you, and I was like, "Oh, there's a Latino caucus." I was like, "That's new." So yeah,
Well, caucus, I guess, again, a lot of people tend to have that question. What is a caucus? The term, or like the explanation that I like to use best, is pretty much it's almost synonymous with like a club, if you will.
Okay.
That's like what the association that
like
people
a
most match with.
fraternity type of.
I wouldn't say fraternity,
Okay,
but,
okay.
but it's
Say,
like
no, no.
it's like a group of people united for a single for something, right?
Okay,
That's
for a
like
cause or
yeah, that's
Okay.
the definition of caucus, like in plain terms. Then you add these other terms to it. In our case, the Latino Caucus, it's a group of legislators in this instance that their focus is advocating for legislation that benefits the Latino and immigrant communities of the state.
Yeah.
Similar to us, there's a few other major legislative caucuses. So now we have the Legislative Black Caucus, which I believe is the oldest caucus in Maryland. We have the Women Legislators of Maryland, and they are, I believe, the first women's caucus in the nation.
In the nation.
In the
Wow.
nation. Well, there's many more now, but at their founding, they were the first in the nation, which is pretty impressive stuff.
It is. Yeah.
And then we have the Latino Caucus.
Hey.
We we have one of the highest memberships in the nation for a Latino Caucus, which is a huge achievement for us.
That's wild. Okay.
Standing at 91 members.
Wow.
And then we have, of course, the AAPI Caucus, and most recently we have the LGBTQ Caucus, and we have the Jewish Caucus that are also now a part of the team. And then there's a lot of other small caucuses, but these, I guess you could say, are like the big caucuses that are like consistently working in the Maryland General Assembly to sort of advocate for their groups. So that's just a general overview of that. Of course, again, us with the Latino Caucus,
Yeah.
our main thing is improving and helping the Latino community and the immigrant communities here in the state.
That's really good though. And I think a lot of people need to know more that there are people out here fighting for us. You know what I mean? And I
Absolutely.
was just talking about that and I'm like, dude, we gotta support a little more. So since then, since you kind of got this, like what has been the work? Like what have you seen? What have you experienced? And then we can kind of jump into what's going on now. Yeah.
Well, I've seen. Oh my God, I've seen so much. I mean, when I thought,
And this is in Maryland.
yeah, this is Maryland.
Maryland
Yeah,
only.
Maryland only.
Okay.
Maryland only. Every other state has their, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there is a congressional Hispanic caucus.
Okay.
There's also for other caucuses there is a like congressional versions as well, or like federal versions, but these are all for state level.
Okay.
I will say again from being in the Latino caucus and my experience there. I mean, at first, when you think of like Latino issues, the first thing you think of is, of course, immigration and things of that nature. I mean, that's tends to be the hot topic with the community.
Yeah.
But being in that in the organization, I learned that there were so many other issues that impact the community. Primarily, one of them was health. I remember my first year that I came into the caucus, health was the big priority. And, I don't come from a health background in my education or in, the work that I've done in the back. So, it was kind of like going into a little bit like no man's land because I didn't have a full grasp. And just being involved, again, that's first session with, the work around health that the caucus was doing specifically around a bill called Access to Care, which its whole purpose was to ensure that anybody, regardless of their immigration status, was able to get health insurance through the state. This was a huge opportunity because, the state healthcare system is a lot more affordable. It's a lot better quality, and there's so much better language access, which makes it so much more easy to navigate. Granted, up until now, the commercial market has always been open. If you get your Blue, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United, but the commercial system is very hostile, especially if you don't speak English. And even if you speak English, it's such an intense system to be a part of because you'll be in a call for like 3 hours and there's so many loops and it's just
It's like a very stressful
it's
experience.
such a stressful process. And
Yeah.
what ends up happening, especially with the Latino and immigrant communities, is that they'll just
Been like, whatever.
not get insurance and they'll wait until something is at a life-threatening point. And by then they're running into the emergency room facing death. And again, that's again, to us, we wanted to pass this bill because we felt that that's inhumane, that's not fair. Not only does it give people dignity, make sure that they take care of themselves, it provides that preliminary health care to them, but as an other, I guess, by proxy benefit was that it also saved the state about 150 to 170 million dollars because of this preliminary care and this care that people were now going to be able to access because of the bill. And thankfully that year the bill passed. The bill passed, so we did pass that. And apart from that, was working on so much legislation. We passed around, I want to say, 56 bills that year. And it was like legislation on healthcare, education, environment. I mean, it was literally anything and everything that could impact the community. Like our work was being on the grounds when it came to research, understanding it, connecting why it was important to the community, just realizing just how interconnected all of these things are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been a very interesting opportunity, and it's been very eye opening to see just, I guess, how complex the system really is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, give me 1 second. I'm just want to double check something. I feel like a creative. I'm always like have that anxiety. I'm like, dude, is it recording? And then you're a videographer, so
I totally get it. Let me tell you, I have like old Sony cameras.
Yeah.
I use two Sony A7 twos.
Okay.
So pretty old cameras.
Yeah.
And standard, they come with a 15-minute recording limit. And I have these I do 30-minute sessions when I do
these interviews. Yeah.
So it's like I'm like trying to time it for when they stop recording because then I gotta figure
it's
it
such
out.
a struggle, bro.
It's so bad.
And that's why I got that's my actual camera over there, and I'm using this one from the studio. But yeah, I mean that's the reason why I went to the cinema cameras,
Right.
just because it can record a lot longer.
That makes sense.
All right, but let me jump back around because I kind of threw it off a little bit, because you were touching on something that was very important. You said, all right, there's a lot of Latino community here in Maryland and itself. We're speaking specifically about Maryland. And then aside from the immigration thing, and I think I've done the same thing where I think about the caucus and the first thing I think about is immigration. I think that's, like you said, is the hot topic. It's what's going on.
Yeah.
It's what, a lot of us are like family members. It's really the first thing that we think about before we think about health.
Yeah.
And what you're pointing out really is just like really what happens to our uncles, to our parents, where we're like, yo, ven al hospital, esa tos, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right.
dude, esa tos, that cough, dude, like, it's just don't sound right. No, hombre, que no sé qué, like,
Una
you,
pastillita y ya
it's a
estamos.
patito,
Right,
like,
right.
yo, el Tylenol. And that's it, and it's really unfortunate to really see a lot of people that, don't have those opportunities or don't understand. And even for myself, like you said, it's not just for the Spanish speaker. Like, if I'm gonna be on the phone for 3 hours, dude, you're just like, bro,
Yeah.
this is a whole shift.
No, literally, and not
Yeah.
a lot of people have that kind of time, especially when like healthcare workers, healthcare providers,
Yeah.
the insurance companies, they'll have like their hours are like Monday to Friday, like 9 to 5.
Yeah.
You're like, when am I supposed to call? There's no weekend hours.
So when you jumped in, you
Yeah.
saw all this, need in the community.
Yeah.
How did you start connecting with the right people to pass bills? Are you one of the dudes who like, hey, this is a bill that we need? You talk to a specific person and then you guys work that together and try to pass it, or what does that look like?
Well, when I first came into the role, I had the great benefit that I came at a time when especially the Latino legislative, elected officials had become very united. Not that there wasn't unity in the past, but that the level of unity that existed, it was very different to what it had been like maybe 10, 15 years ago. And, when I jumped into it, I had the benefit of like being able to, attend certain events or situations where, I was able to connect with many of them at the same time and sort of immediately start building those connections.
Mm.
In Annapolis, they'll have like receptions or they'll have like people walking around Annapolis. And, that gives you a really good opportunity to also just start connecting with people, understanding who's like standing for what issues and sort of building that network as you start off. Between that and also, leadership at the time helping me by introducing me to different people that were important to the cause was also a huge factor that helped me sort of expand that network. And from
Yeah.
there, it was just like once you got the ball rolling, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I wish it was directly through the work that you like met the most amount of people, but it's really, again, when you're going to a lot of like the events around the community and a lot of like the hosting, is that when you really sort of gain a lot more knowledge of who's out there, who's advocating, and it really helps out a lot more. Even now, I like my network is still growing to this day.
Yeah.
And because there's so many people dedicated to so many different causes and so many different niches, and it's
Yeah.
just a huge network of people that
Yeah.
exist here in Maryland. And but yeah, just having that structure of support with leadership in the caucus, and plus like the Latino elected officials welcoming me in and sort of giving that support of whatever you need, we're here. I do this, I do
And
that.
I've
sort of
seen it.
really helps get you out there and sort of really connect with the community. And again, with that united passion, it's really contagious, especially when you're like in a room with like 40 plus elected officials that are all like
they're all like,
expressing their passion
let's
for
go.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, you know what? Yeah, this is good. Yeah, I got this. And
Yeah.
it's just those are one of the really like best ways to really help expand, and it's what really helped me as I started in this work.
You said that my network is still expanding, and one of the I actually learned this from Shia LaBeouf. I'm not sure if you know Shia LaBeouf is.
I do.
Yeah, so he was in an interview and he was talking about different things, but he mentioned this thing called the ministry of presence, and just being there, and it kind of sparked something in me. One, because you're very much the same way. We go into the event, we're meeting people, we're connecting with people, then we might send an email, then we might, have a conversation, like we had a cup of coffee, you go out to get something. You're just nurturing the relationship as you go. And then, and when I meant like, I've seen that, I've seen how people in your surroundings, other delegates, they respect you, they admire you, they uplift you, and they're like, yo, you need to talk to Jason. Jason is the guy, you know what I mean? So it's like, I've seen that, and you've really have, in my opinion, gotten down the whole ministry of presence, like actually walking into the room and just being present. And that itself like opens up like so many different opportunities, so many people. And once again, like you are a very genuine person. So like
Oh, I
that,
appreciate that.
it's contagious. The same way how like someone else, like you said, you're in the room and they're like empowered, they're passionate. We gotta fight for this or whatever that looks like. You're like, yeah, you know what? You're right. You know, I'm gonna fight for that too. You know, I'm on the same boat. So it's like, it's very very important for a lot of people to understand that ministry of presence, because it makes a really huge impact on where on the communities that you're looking to impact and how you are getting involved within the community. Recently, I was doing a speaking engagement with an organization that she brought in Dani Taveras.
Dani Taveras, yeah.
Bro, you know,
Love
look,
her.
I love her too. I love her too. You know what? But I wasn't expecting her to be there. I wasn't expecting her to be there, and I got so nervous the moment she walked in, because I had to like translate. I had to speak in English and then do it in Spanish, right? And it's one of those things like I don't really practice much, you know.
Right.
But you know, my wife is black, so it's like I don't talk Spanish unless I'm speaking to my parents or to one of my family members or maybe a friend. We throw some Spanish here and there.
Gotcha.
But man, you know, I was talking, and then I was trying to follow a script, and then she walked in, and then I just felt like this, like, oh crap, you know, like she just walked in. Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting a delegate to come in here. And then it was like, what's her name? Dani Taveras. I was just like nervous so bad. And then when I started messing up on words, bro,
Yeah.
I could see her face just go,
She'll clock you. Yeah, she'll clock you.
yo, and I just felt even worse. I was just like, tierra, cómeme. I was like, please, just, Lord, open the ground, just take me real quick. Because, man, but once again, is that ministry of presence. You know, even though that I would say it wasn't my best performance.
Right.
You know, it wasn't my best day of translating, really.
Right.
I felt like, you know, later on, and honestly, I didn't stay to hang out. I felt so bad. I was like, guys, I got another meeting. I have to go.
Your like agenda's like all empty. You're like, I really gotta go.
Yeah, I kid you not. I went to the bathroom. I even posted something. I was like, dude, I flopped this entire thing. Like, I felt so bad, you know, and it's crazy because later on, you know, I was like, I'm not going to get hired again. That's dead, you know, and she actually hired me again. She was like, no, I got really great feedback from the people. People really liked you. And then, you know, I was trying to mask it with some like charismatic, you know, but it seemed like she got good feedback from Dani, I guess. I hope. I don't know. But, you know, whenever she sees this, I'm improving. You know what I mean?
There
It's
you
just,
go.
I'm just improving. I legit left out of there and I was like, I'm never doing this again. I can't do this. No. And then I was just like, nah, bro, you failed, but you got to get back up. You got to do it again. That's the only way, you know? And
Absolutely.
and when this year started, unfortunately, I got a lot of racism by the beginning of the year. Like, I would be at the store and legit, it was so crazy. There was a lady who was like, it's me. I wasn't having really a good day. So I kind of just like, I grabbed something. I put it on the counter. The lady was like, you know, she rung me up. I heard her say hi to me. But I was in my head, so I heard it, but I didn't respond fast enough, right? And I try to be, you know, I tend to be polite. Hey, mucho gusto, nice to meet you, hello, whatever way I'm feeling. Right. Before I got my words out, the lady behind me, she said, oh, that's why they're getting deported, because they're rude. Wow. And I legit was just like, I was going to let it slide, but then I was like, wait, hold on, no. Because it was me, the lady, and then a row of Latinos behind there, right? When she was not Latina, obviously. So she was like, you know, I looked at her and I was like, you know, I can understand what you're saying, right? Like straight up in English. And she was like, excuse me? And I was like, you know, I can understand what you said. And what you said was wrong. I'm not apologizing to you. I'm not asking you to apologize to me. I was just saying what you did was wrong. Exactly. And for you, ma'am, I'm sorry I didn't respond quick enough. I'm having a hard day. And I was just like, pleasure to see you. I hope you have a really good day. And I just left it at that, and I looked at her, and I was like, just so you know, that was wrong. You don't do that to anyone. Crazy enough, I went to a fast food restaurant after that, right? Yeah. I was going to get some lunch or whatever, and I walk in, and crazy enough, that same lady is right there. Like, she's the next one on the line.
Seriously?
Yeah, dude, but I wasn't rude. I was just like, I walked in, and I was just kind of like, dang, yo, I hope it's not a whole other thing. She turned around, and she was like, my apologies. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. You know, but, you know, these are experiences now. That's me. I'm an English speaker. I understand. I'm just a little bit of a confrontationalist. I might just be like, bro, you no, you know.
Right.
But it makes me feel sad sometimes because there's a lot of people out here that don't understand, that can't, like defend themselves in a way, and they're just like don't know what to say or how to handle it, especially what's been going on recently. So, from the standpoint of America, from the standpoint of Maryland,
Yeah.
Where are we right now with this whole administration? Where are we right now with the whole, be careful you going out before, be careful getting a ticket, be careful getting pulled over for a red light. Like, I feel like our community, in a way, it's kind of like, dude, we got to just lock in real quick. We can't be too loose. What's
Yeah.
your thought?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. I mean, nobody should have to suffer through that. That's not right. And it's a shame that she only apologized when she got called out. Because had it not been that way, like you said, if you weren't an English speaker, she would have just taken that with her and just been like, yeah, I really showed them, which is unfortunate. That being said, I think Maryland stands strong. I think Maryland truly stands strong.
Yes.
And I say that because through all of this, I mean, we have really, stood our ground. And I mean, anybody can see this with, especially when it comes to like the work that the Attorney General's office has done, especially when it comes to, the lawsuits and joining and, supporting the community. That we've stood our ground in proving that, we aren't going to be, a part of, how would you say this? That we aren't going to, I guess, allow the current administration to just do what they want with the state. And that's been shown again by some of the work that we did this last session as well, and some of the the things that we've been trying to do. It's hard, whether you're Latino, whether you're Black or Asian or of any other ethnic or racial context. At the end of the day, especially here in Maryland, the main intersection that connects us all is the fact that we all come from immigrants. We're all that's the big intersectionality that we all share. And because of that, we all unite behind that front, especially this session. And I'm going back to it because we did three big things that relate to what you're talking about right now.
Okay.
Those being working on three bills: the Values Act, the Sensitive Locations Act, and the Data Privacy Act.
Okay.
Um,
Ooh, data privacy. Interesting.
these bills, unfortunately, the way they ended up passing wasn't the way we wanted per se.
Okay.
But first and foremost, when we were advocating for them during the session, it was something that united everybody. I mean, we did rallies.
When you mean everybody, just the Latino community or
No.
all types of people?
No, I mean we had Latino orgs, we had Black orgs, we had South Asian orgs, we had like any sort of like ethnic or immigrant
Coming from immigrants.
group was just there ready to advocate and make voice throughout the rallies that we did. And it would get packed. It would get packed because people were truly passionate about advocating for these laws. And the way they passed was a little bit funky because essentially all three got merged into one, and that being the Maryland Values Act. And but these laws were to target again a lot of these issues that were happening in the community. First, addressing 287G, which I don't know if you know what 287G
No,
is.
I don't.
So 287G, to put it, I guess, in simple terms, it's this bill that lets local law enforcement be deputized by ICE. It lets them work together, and they have, I believe, three different models that they can use to work together. But the most concerning is the task force model. The task force model works essentially in this way. I guess I can give an example. Let's say you are in a county that has a 287G agreement and they're under the task force model, right? If you get stopped by your local law enforcement for, I don't know, a broken headlight, you have a broken headlight or something of that nature, they pull you over, they can check your immigration information, demand your immigration information on the spot. And if you don't provide it or if you don't have it, they can immediately sort of go through the process of taking you with ICE and enforcing those agreements.
What's this called again?
287G.
287G.
287G. And it's an ineffective law. Sorry, it's an ineffective program. The program has been shown to not be very good. And then on top of that, the program is based on prejudice. I mean, you don't just, an officer that stops someone and then goes to the window, to ask for their their
Status.
status information.
Yeah.
They're not doing it because if you've done something that isn't
Out of place
out of
or something like
place,
that.
that'll
Yeah.
suddenly say
It's
that
like,
you're
oh, you're Latino. You might just be an immigrant. Let me check you out real
right,
quick.
and that's prejudice. That's
Yeah.
prejudice, and that's a huge concern. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of what we were getting, especially when we were advocating for the bill, was that, well, we're not like, because there are counties in Maryland that do have it, especially on, around Western Shore, and I believe only one place in Eastern Shore. So a lot of, especially around the rural areas, it exists right now, unfortunately. And
Crazy. Yeah.
it is, and again, a lot of the response we were getting was, well, we're not doing the task force model. We're doing, I'm trying to remember what the model is called, but it's a model where it's enforced once individuals are like detained and already in a holding cell, if I'm not mistaken. But the issue is that they can switch like that. I mean, they can do it if they want. They're just not choosing to right now. And with what we've seen in other states happening,
Yeah.
again, we're not
it's
exactly
not
going to
ethical,
leave that
right?
up for them to decide. That's dangerous. That's
Yeah.
concerning. And so that's why, although they can say, well, we're not doing that model right now, what guarantee is there that you're not going to try to put that model in afterwards? Which is why we were so focused on ensuring that 287G was out of the state. And again, we didn't get the full removal that we wanted. Again, there's
What was the removal you guys want? Like the entire.
we wanted all 287G agreements in the state to be out.
No
No
matter-
more. If you had a contract that was already happening,
Eliminate it.
you got to end it by X date. Done.
So like the West is like, all right, you got the West. I mean, Maryland West, right?
Western Maryland, yeah.
Western Maryland, no more. That's
Yeah.
what we're looking for.
So it was like,
Okay.
again, and this is using an example, it was like by July, if you have a 287G agreement, you're done. Like you have to end it. And anybody else that wants to join one can't join. Again, unfortunately, that aspect didn't pass. But we did pass other protections around sensitive locations and data privacy in that same Values Act. Sensitive locations, again, dealt around protecting areas where, there was schools or churches or, state courts or any other entity that's state funded, to ensure that, ICE detention processes or raids, weren't going to happen there, because, what was happening is that, well, people were in a lot of fear, right? They were concerned that, oh, if I go to church, if I go to school, students weren't going attending classes because of that fear that they were going to get, pulled out of class. And then suddenly, well, you're not a citizen, so you're going to go back to,
We saw that a
X
lot.
century. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were like, that can't happen. And another thing that, again, because when these things happen, again, people start to share on social media and they get scared, and they just interpret everything as ICE.
It's like a
And
domino effect almost. Yeah.
so it creates a very confused chaos. And what we saw that also happen, which was, again, a very malicious way of like ICE to create that fear, is that we would see certain agencies just pass their car through these like areas where people were genuinely in fear, and we would
ICE.
and we would get the like recordings of a constituent or of a community member that was like, hey, they just saw this car here, they were passing by, and it just so happened to be exactly during like school dismissal hours that suddenly the car was just passing, just to create that fear, just to make that people get scared.
It's scary. Yeah.
And so again, this bill, the Values Act, we really worked on it, and afterwards we ensured that the guidance was relevant with the Office of the Attorney General, and we worked together. We brought community orgs and community leaders, and we said, all right, like the bill ensures that we protect these areas that provide basic needs and basic necessities to the community. Because apart from it, supporting with the areas I mentioned, you had stuff like soup kitchens, trauma centers, things of this nature that are all very, very much needed, day to day by a lot of members of the community. And thankfully that passed. It's now implemented. There's guidelines out there available that anybody can access through the Office of the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And they can see it's very detailed, it's very thorough, especially around state agencies. And the nice thing is that on top of that, the bill gave the Attorney General the strength to say, all right, if we see that there's an agency that we might have missed for some reason, we can add it on the bill, just to make sure that that area is protected.
Yeah,
Maybe we didn't think about it, when we were first building the bill, because we were thinking of X agencies, but there's this agency as well. Okay, we can add it. So it really made sure that there was that protection for these sensitive locations from the get-go. Same with data privacy and ensuring.
So what is data privacy? I'm assuming data privacy is, if I do pull you over, or if you get pulled over, they can't look at your data type of thing. Is it that, or what is that?
So not exactly. So the data privacy bill, its goal was, if anybody has ever applied for food stamps or like or through the sorry, what's it called, the state's version of FAFSA through like MDEC, if I'm not mistaken, is the initial. Or any other government assistance. I mean, literally anything of the government, of the state government, I should say. You know, we have their data. That data is there because they fill out forms, they
Yeah.
submit, proof of, X and this, and that data is there. And maybe sometimes this data doesn't necessarily ask for, are you undocumented or not, but there'll be some sort of other identifier like, maybe your ID on file isn't real ID, which again it can flag something like that. So what
Yeah.
the bill said was, okay, we have all this data from our residents. We are going to make it so that the federal government can't access this data unless it's specific to someone with a judicial warrant. So they have to come. They can't just come in and have free reign and just grab whatever information they want and go from there. Rather, they have to have a judicial warrant, go specifically for one person or one thing, and that's it.
And that's in Maryland.
That's Maryland wide.
Okay.
That's Maryland wide because again, it's all data that's in state agencies. So Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Aging, things of that nature, where people again apply because they need these helps and need these assistances,
Yeah.
and they trust that the government is gonna not do anything bad with their information.
Yeah.
So that's really why we made a point of passing this legislation, especially this year, with again everything that's happening and all these concerns, and that's why right now we're making it a point to share to the community that hey, we're doing this.
Yeah.
We didn't achieve everything we wanted to, but we want to do more because we
Yeah.
see that the community is in fear and there's so much going on. So that's why I say that Maryland, although there's so much happening, we're standing strong because we're all standing united to try to pass these bills and
Yeah.
do more for the community now more than ever.
So where you guys are looking to go, and where do you see the next couple of years going to? Because I mean, we got what 2028, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So we got a couple of years going on. So what what do you see in your opinion, like forecasting a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, for the community, I guess I'm very confident, especially again from the work that I've seen in my career, that the community is the legislators and our elected officials are gonna continue to advocate, to protect the community. The last thing they want is to do anything that's gonna harm them. I can say that for sure. That's something that I think that commitment is gonna stay. It's definitely going to be hard given the current administration. And even now, like it's only been a couple of months and it's already so hard. That's not even considering, whatever other obstacles the state already might have been facing and working with. The budget was a big conversation that everybody had.
Yeah.
And that was something that, we had to be very conscious of, for example, this year, as we were passing bills and considering, how to be as effective as possible. And
Yeah.
because of all of that, I think it's going to be a very interesting, situation going into these next couple of years. I know 2026 and the midterm elections are going to be a huge decision maker for all of this, because that is really where, a lot of the community is seeing that we want to sort of bounce back from everything that's happening and sort
Yeah.
of establish that stop. But, it's scary that up until then, there's sort of no way to really do, I wouldn't say not to do
Okay.
anything, because
Okay.
we are still doing things. But it's scary to see that until then, there is this level of power from the federal government and, this disregard for, rules for
Yeah.
for how things are supposed to be, for order.
So fill me in, because I've been hearing 2026 a lot more, and even other podcasts, right? So fill me in on 2026 and what as of right now, what it seems like it's gonna happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, ideally, and again, speaking from my own opinion, again, outside of the caucus, I guess I should probably mention this. I have independently, on my own time, the opportunity to be a part of the Maryland Young
Okay.
Democrats, and the
That's cool.
Prince George's Young Dems. Obviously, the community is always priority number one. That being said, I think the big expectation, right, is that given the sort of bitter taste that all of these initiatives that the federal government has done has left with everybody, the expectation is that there's going to be a bounce back from the Democratic Party, right, to sort of respond and protect and help stop sort of this chaos. I think that's like the expectation number one for most of everybody. I think the last thing people want right now is to sort of have an extension of this, giving everything that's happening right now. Again, people are in fear, and it's really
Yeah.
bad. And it's not to say that oh, this party is infinitely better than this one, or this party is infinitely better than that one. But again, given just the horrible work that has happened come out of the federal government, I mean, it's it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And especially in Maryland, where there's just a Democratic supermajority, and both at the federal level and at the state level. I mean, it's clear from my interactions with our legislators that there is that desire right now to bounce back and establish more protections now and moving forward to 2026. Really building that solid foundation.
It's a lot to take in, because I mean, this year started and we started seeing a bunch of stuff on social media,
Yeah.
like unethical stuff happening on social media from all over the country, or I guess maybe not all over the country, but very specific areas around the country. And I feel like we've been fortunate enough to not have, I guess, that 287G situation. You know what I mean? Because I mean, it really sucks. I mean, one of these days, I was walking my dog, and now I was born here, so it's kind of like, well, I was born here, I don't really have that problem, like, or I said, and I don't want to sound like weird or anything, but it's like, I was born here, it's kind of like, all right, come try to grab me, bro, like, what's up,
Right.
but it's still, I don't know, I feel like it's still one of those things. Like, for me, it was like, because I have a lot of friends who are like, yeah, I was born here, blah, 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 like, try to pull me over, you see, I'm gonna sue you. Honestly, like, I get it, but honestly, I don't even want to be pulled over and be put in that situation, period. So, there was this one occasion that I was walking my dogs, and this Ford Explorer just pulled up. Like, it was just white. It was just a white Ford Explorer. They had no signs. They had nothing on it. And, Ford Explorers are usually cop cars, So it's like, it's just that type of car that's usually used, in the government, right? So I kid you not, it just pulled in hard. It just like, like parked right in front of me. And I low key at that moment, I was like, wait, me? I was just like, is it my turn right now? Legit. I was just like, oh crap. Like, and I legit for that second, I was like, yo, I'm about to run. I'm about to run. Now, turned out to just be an Uber driver, right? But this Uber driver was driving crazy, and this lady walked out. I had my dog, so my dog started kind of like, because they pulled up so weird, my dogs were like kind of like riled up, and they started like barking, right? So first thing, I'm like, yo, if it is ice, they had to get through my dogs first, because I have a pretty big dog. And then two, I was just kind of like, bro, I might have to run. Like, sure, catch me if you can. But, and that's a fear that I guess, a small fear that I had, that someone that actually was born here, and it was just like, well, I am protected in a way for my citizenship, and, for being born here in itself. And then I was just thinking about, man, like, these people that are, with this fear, that don't feel like they have this, paperwork that can back them up. You know what I mean? And I've had friends that their family members decided to do like volunteer deportation.
Yeah.
And, I was just like, man, that sucks, because it's just like, they're like, well, I don't even want to be put in that situation. I don't even want to get pulled over, and next they're asking me for this. I might as well just leave for right now and then figure it out from there, which I find that very unfortunate. You know what I mean? So it's a really, really sad thing to me. And this is why I wanted to have this conversation, because I feel like a lot more people need to find out what's really happening here, and how, I don't know, like, just what's happening. I think that really just happens, just like, what's happening. If we know what's happening, we can have a little bit more at ease.
Right.
So what was your thought process when it comes, or maybe like talk to me about like the whole birthright thing.
Right.
And if you know more about that, I don't know.
So unfortunately, since I'm not at a federal level, I don't have, I guess, the best grasp on the issue. But again, with the information that we do have, I mean, we've seen it's been a very hot topic, especially right now. And again, there's that concern that now, even if you're a citizen, that there's still that risk. I remember right before this started getting a lot worse, we were telling people, like this shouldn't be the case, but if you can, try to carry with you like two different forms of like proof of citizenship. For example, like if you have your ID, also take out your passport card.
Dude, I don't carry my passport, my ID.
Yeah, well, nowadays, you can also get a passport card, so you don't have to carry, the bulky passport, and that way you just have the card.
Yeah.
And I think it's really just for domestic travel and like to like Canada and like or into the U.S. that it's really useful for. But just having that extra like layer of security.
Yeah.
But again, we shouldn't even have to be at that level. And then
we shouldn't be having this conversation.
Exactly. We shouldn't even be having this kind of conversation, having to go to these lengths to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And then, again, we saw this concern get even more raised with the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who, regardless of, whether you feel that he did something or he didn't, the fundamental issue
That's
here,
the guy that got deported to El Salvador.
Yes.
And was like that whole situation of Bukele bringing back, and it was just like, no, and it was like this whole thing. He ended up coming back,
He did
right?
end up coming back.
Yeah, but after like, what, 6 months? How long was it? I don't want to throw a number out there.
I want to say it was at least 3 months.
Okay.
It was a couple of months. But again, like, you shouldn't even have to be in that situation to begin with.
Yeah.
This whole idea of like, sending people out just for X reason, like that is just wrong, right?
Yeah.
Especially because, in this case, like I said, whether you stand on, if he did this or he did that, regardless of that, the big issue here was that, a person with, protections with who was recognized here as legal by, the American law was still thrown out like they didn't care.
Yeah.
And that was a big question because now, without that due process, it's like, all right, well, now you're kind of setting this precedent that, citizenship, residency doesn't really matter. You can just, if we don't like you, you're out.
Yeah.
Again, thankfully, he was able to come back. Unfortunately, now under another case, which I believe they're doing in Tennessee.
No, I haven't heard that one.
So there's another case against him. By I want to say
The same guy.
Same guy.
Oh.
It's in a huge situation. Again, I want to say it's in Tennessee, but I can't say for sure.
Okay.
But again, from the get-go, again, especially between our elected officials here, because you got to remember he was I believe he was from like District 21 where all of this happened. That's like the Beltsville area.
Wait, so that guy is from here?
He's from here.
He's from here in Maryland.
Yeah.
Dude, I did not know that.
Yeah, he's from here in Maryland. Literally,
he got
from
grabbed here in Maryland.
Here in Maryland, he was literally from the Beltsville like ish area again, like that area of like
Route
after,
1.
Yeah,
Silver Spring type of,
Yeah, I'm like I
College
see that.
Park.
Yeah, exactly. Like I see that and I hear that. I'm like, that's like 15 minutes away from.
Dude, that's right around the corner.
Exactly. So that's why
So that happened here. They deported him from here.
Yeah.
Dude, I thought that was like in LA.
No, no. But that's again that we saw that, and obviously that's why between the caucus and our elected officials, everybody took action. We and you can find this online as well. We made it very clear that we stood with Senator Van Hollen, who went over to check on him, and we stood with him. First in a huge rally over in Silver Spring that we did, I don't know if you know where the Civic Center is over in Silver Spring.
Yeah.
So we packed that entire area. We did a huge thing, rallying in support with Senator Van Hollen. And then when Senator Van Hollen came back over at Dole's Airport, we were right there behind him. We worked with his team and we were there next to him, with the family of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And, we stood our ground. We said, this was unfair. This wasn't right. And, that's where you heard, Senator Van Hollen share the Margarita Gate, as they call it, when he was in El Salvador. So, it's an unfortunate situation. Again, I can't say for sure, everything that's happening at a federal level because I don't work at a federal level. I'm not too involved at the federal level. But when it comes to like the big court cases, I mean, you see that like Gaza has really taken a lead here and has really made sure that
I've seen Gaza everywhere.
Gaza has really been spearheading again this effort of protecting birthright citizenship, and being out there for the community as well. So through them, we're able to really get these updates and we make it clear that something's being done. We aren't just leaving this to fate. So between our work at the state, as a collective, and the work of our state of our community orgs and their outreach, that's really how we're trying to protect the
Yeah.
community, especially during these very uncertain times. Unfortunately, the reality is that we may not have the answers of what's happening at the federal level, but again, we can guarantee that at a state level, we care about Maryland, we recognize what Maryland is, and we're going to do whatever we can to protect its people, because these are good people.
How can you talk about like your thoughts on the big beautiful bill? Your thoughts on like first how like that administration, the Trump administration, is handling everything. I mean, one side I've heard that you know everything that he's done so far it's actually kind of given fruit. For example, right? The whole thing, we take the Latinos out of the farms, farming is going to drop, and we're not going to have any food and all that stuff, right? But so far, I mean, we still have food. It doesn't seem like has made a huge impact, in my opinion, from my view. And also, you know what I've been hearing, like, yeah, that's not making a huge impact of what we thought initially. But what is your thought on that? Like,
On the big beautiful bill.
yeah, the big beautiful bill and like his approaches, because they're talking about like, and I can't remember who. Maybe I should have noted that down. But they were talking about like everything that he's done right now. Yes, I mean it's affected us, the brown community, in a way, in a lot of different ways. But for the country, as what they're saying, it's like in a better position. And now with the cherry on top, which is now the big beautiful bill, right? So what are your thoughts on that, of what's been going on, what's actually happening, like factually, and then what can we expect with this whole bill and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, the big ugly bill, unfortunately, because again, this is not a beautiful bill. I respectfully have to disagree with that.
Mm.
Again, maybe we haven't experienced necessarily, firsthand in some ways, some of the issues, but you have, like, for example, the situation that happened a little while ago with eggs. A simple grocery item that
It's like
was
$12.
$12 eggs. You couldn't find eggs. That's why I'm like, little by little, you
Yeah.
realize how these political decisions influence the day-to-day lives of people.
Yeah.
And again, working with the community and with different people, being blessed in this role, you in those conversations, different people, explain and break down, how it impacts such and such thing. For example, working with a lot of the people in like the health sector, you know, uh, uh, they'll share their perspective on the bill and, like, how certain things are going to happen here. One big concern is its impact on Medicaid and how it's going to negatively impact it.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I heard from especially our people in the healthcare sector, and I take the healthcare sector as an example. Again, this can really be applied to any other stakeholder org that's really here that can talk about it. Because they put it in a really nice way. A lot of the people, what I heard was, the way the bill was designed to impact was like this. Obviously, this wasn't done like just out of the whim.
Yeah.
Like, this was done with
Intent.
with intent and with like razor thin accuracy. Like, it's meant to hurt. The way it cuts and goes into budgets, and it goes into things that, like, unless you're really in the weeds of these like organizations and understanding these grants and these funds, you wouldn't really worry about it. You would leave it to like X org to worry about. But the scalpel precision that they've taken to just hurt the day-to-day American really reflects just how bad the bill is. I mean, there's nothing really beautiful about it. I mean, you'll see it with, and again, this is taking the example of that party itself, the Republican Party. You saw how, after they passed the bill, certain Republican legislators were like, oh, I wasn't aware that it impacted this or it impacted that.
I did see
Wait, and now we want to put an amendment to take that away. Again, because it impacts everybody so badly. It's not a beautiful bill. On the contrary, it's a big, ugly bill. And again, we at a state level, we can only do so much to protect ourselves. And we're hoping that the bounce back from 2026 will help. But at least this bill right now, it's not what we want. It's not what we stand for. And even with our federal partners, we're going to continue to advocate against it.
Yeah.
We're going to continue to advocate for the things that it cuts and how it hurts the community, because it hurts the community. There's nothing beautiful about it.
That's a big pill to swallow. Um, I feel like a lot of people. I don't know, man. I'm like right in between people, and I would say in my network,
Yeah.
right? In the network where some people are like, "Yo, that's great," like, you know, and then just others is like, "Dude, that's not great." So it's one of those things that I'm trying to educate myself a lot, and hence why you're here in a little bit, you know, because it's like I really don't know, you know what I mean? And someone I don't like to be one of those people who's just like I'm on this side and I'm on that side, because for me it's like, and I don't know, tell me if that's wrong, you know, because I just feel like I don't know enough just yet.
Right.
If anything, I'm here for the people. I'm not. I'm not here for necessarily a financial standpoint. I want tax deduction, all that, because I've been hearing all that side of like you're gonna get tax deduction and
Right.
da 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 and more tips and you know, but you know how at the end of the day, how's this really gonna affect our people? And I am one of those people. You know what I mean? And my kids are going to be one of those people, and that's really what my goal is. Like that's what's the best foot forward. And for someone that's in my position, who is in that position where it's like, what do we do? Like, you know, is this right? Is this wrong? What would you say?
Well, I mean, again, kind of goes without saying, right? Everything that the federal administration is doing right now is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, it's creating this uncertainty and this concern with everybody, and people are in fear. It's a very valid thing. That being said, I mean, now more than ever, it's so important for us to stay united. It's so important for us to like rally together and understand that if we aren't working all together on the same page, this is not going to go away, right? It's so important now more than ever that we unite our voice and our advocacy to ensure that we're protecting our communities, not just the Latino community, but also, you know, different immigrant communities, different, you know, social community. You know, it's issues that target all of us, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that,
Yeah.
you know, there's with this fear, you know, it's important to, you know, not succumb to it. You know, it's important to understand that, you know, we still have a voice, we still have a vote.
Yeah.
You know, that hasn't lost its power, that hasn't lost its validity. Now more than ever, it's important for you to speak your voice. And again, like, well, I can't speak for the federal level because I'm not as in depth there. But even at a state level, when it comes to, you know, getting involved, like a day-to-day person can get involved with the government, state government when we're in session. And I mean that because of a lot of
Wow.
the bills that we do. You know, a lot of these bills, you know, usually you'll see this, you know, at a federal level or at a state level. You know, you see the person just testifying to the committee, you know, and it's a whole thing. And you think, you know, to do this, I have to, you know, go to Annapolis, find parking. I have to dress up. I have to take time out of my day. Maybe I'm a working person. I can't share that. And people may feel that it's very hard to share your testimony because of that. But now more than ever, especially in Maryland, it's so much easier to be able to become an advocate from your own house. And I say that because through our MGA website, literally just like you can look up
Yeah.
the Maryland General Assembly and
It'll-
it'll pop up.
Mhm.
Our website is built in a way that you know, you create your own accounts as a person of you know, that wants to testify,
Okay.
and literally what you can do is you can choose to testify virtually,
Hmm.
you, meaning that you'll get a Zoom link when it's time to testify, and literally from your house, you can just go in front of the committee. They have screens up top where everybody can see it inside the committee room
What?
live, and you know they'll send you a Zoom link, and like from your office or from your room, you can say I'm such and such. You know, this is bothering me. This is concerning to me, or I believe this is beneficial, and I am supporting it. I think you should support
Wow.
it too. Again, without going to Annapolis,
Yeah.
without having to do all these things, and you're done. And again, oh, sorry.
No, go, go.
On top of that, to add another
This is
layer of
important. This
convenience
is
to
important.
it,
Yeah.
you can also do if maybe you're scared to show your face, or you know you have a little bit more fear about that, or you're not as comfortable around a camera.
Kind of do an anonymous type
Right,
of
right,
thing.
right. That's okay. You can submit your testimony through a written format. You can just write it down. My name is such and such. I live such and such in such and such place, you know, or I'm represented by such and such district. I am in support of, you know, such X bill, or I am against such bill. You know, I ask for your favorable report or
And
your
I'm
unfavorable
assuming this helps. Like the more people that are on the forefront, is makes a huge, bigger impact on the people that make the decision.
Absolutely. Because when they see that there is this support and that there's this legislation that wants to get passed, you know, they're not going to go against what the people say.
Okay.
they're going to understand. Okay, like, there's clearly support for this. There's no support for that, and they're gonna balance that out. That's the job of the committee, and it's a job that they do very well. And so that's why I say there's this now more than ever. It's so easy for if you're like a day to day person that you feel like these issues are so big and you can't do
I have
anything.
to say something. My voice can say something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can get involved. You can do again from your phone. From your phone, you can literally just go on your phone, submit testimony from there. Like just do a Google Doc, just download it as a PDF, submit it, and you're done for the bill that you want to support. And the important thing that we share now more than ever is that like if you do this, like you're not gonna get chased by ICE or some other agency. Like you can do this safely. Like you're not gonna get persecuted for sharing your voice.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Which makes it that much more indispensable.
And someone like myself, right? I just mentioned I'm kind of neutral because I need to learn more.
Right.
Not because just I need to learn more. Like I'm very much of a person who likes to take educational decisions. And unfortunately, with social media, I feel like you get just bombarded with so much. Like one side says this, the other side says this. Now there's this third party that's saying all this. You're just like, what do I believe? And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who listen to all this and then they take it and they believe it and then they just hold on to it and then just run with it. And sometimes it turns into anger. Sometimes it turns into a little bit of rage and then just fight for it, which you 100% right. Fight for it. But I try not to listen to social media so much just
Right.
because sometimes it's like you might be right, but is this factual? How close is this to the source? I don't know.
Right.
So it's like me coming to you, you're that one person I would say like, all right, I'm going to listen to Jason because Jason's involved. Jason's there in the community. And, that's more for me. It's like, yeah, I trust this person. I'm going to listen to what they say. And if it's like wrong, if it's not good, it's this, it's just that. All right, bro, I'm going to listen because clearly you're in it. But for people that are out there that may not have access to you or some shape or form, right? How can they get to the most authentic information where they're not listening to social media? They're not listening to like Cristina aquí, just talking everything and just throwing a bunch of things at the wall. And it's like, well, yes, and hold on, that's not factual now.
Right.
You're just throwing more wood to the fire of rage and hate. And that's not what we're looking to do, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah, we're here to fight. But I don't know. Just to me, it's like I'm not gonna give hate where I've been giving hate. You know what I mean? It's like, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I totally understand. And again, like I said before, like I align myself more so with the MD Dems. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you have to be an MD Dem. You have to be an MD Dem as well because I'm an MD Dem. That being said, the unfortunate thing is that to sort of understand this and sort of get a better perspective, it requires time. And sort of that's the gap that social media tends to fill, right? Where like you don't need as much time now to learn more about these parties.
30
'cause
seconds.
It's all right here. It's all right
Yeah.
here, and it's super summarized. But again, you have the issue of like what you see versus what's actually done, right?
Yeah.
And well, first of all, like what I think will always give you the most valid information is going to be the official sources, right? If you go directly to the official, social medias and website, that's always going to have the most valid information of those organizations, what they stand on, and what they do. Again, unfortunately, to get involved, to really understand this, or like to understand, what side you might stand with more, like I said, it requires time, which unfortunately nowadays it's a lot more hard to spare. And but if you do have the time, I'd say get involved, even if it's just one event. Try to see if, because again, what's shown online versus what happens in person is very different.
Yes, 100%.
And what do you call it?
Yes.
When you see, if you see like what the work that the party might be doing on the ground, and you feel like, okay, they are doing this, like this isn't shown, but they are doing this. Okay, maybe I do align myself more with this party, or vice versa with another party, and that way you can draw your own conclusion and feel like, what, they are doing the work. Again, in my case, I saw the party that I feel is doing the work. And, I feel the passion. I feel the desire to improve on the community.
And
again,
you've been putting in the work, 100%.
And it's one of those things that, but unfortunately it takes time, and time is a luxury now more than ever. And so that's the best recommendation I can give, between the most reliable sources, going straight to the source, and then, actually participating and seeing what these orgs are actually about, see if their money is where their mouth is. Those are the two best things that you can do to see, all right, yeah, this is what I sided with. Because
Dude.
I'll say this, I see which party's out there, which is not. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I grew up being told it's two wings from the same bird. And growing up like that, I think it can affect you in certain ways because you're not looking in certain areas. And I would probably say this to like my faith, right? I had to get to a point where I was like, do I believe because I was taught?
Right.
Or do I believe because I actually know? Like, was this something that was taught to me, or was this something that I actually understand, know, and I truly believe?
Right.
So, and I guess giving that example of in this situation where it's like, all right, I need to kind of unlearn things that I've been told and then actually learn for myself and make a decision for myself and align to the areas that I need to align to because of what we've seen or what we like to fight for or what we definitely,
Right.
agree with. Now, years ago, my grandfather from El Salvador, right? He was like, he came up and he was talking to me. He was like, hey, are you into politics? And I was like, no. I was like, no, I don't care. Once again, two wings from the same bird. And he's like, no. He legit stopped me. He was like, stop. I'm going to stop you right there. You need to stop that mindset. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, look at it. I guess in my ignorance. And he was like, son, I need you to look into politics, not because you like to be within the dramas, because you know what's happening to your community, to people that look like you, and what's going to happen with your children. Right. And it made a whole different perspective for me. And I was like, huh, and within that, I started, working with various organizations, nonprofits in DC, got to meet the Black Caucus, the people in social justice, and I was like, oh, there's people fighting for people. I didn't really know that. I think it's something but until you see it, you're like, oh, there's actually people,
Yeah.
And then getting to meet people like you and people like the Latino, Caucus and just other like delegates and people that are just fighting, I don't want to jump into anything, I guess, with the thought process of like, this is my perspective and that's it. No one can change it. And it's my way or the highway type of way. Because I feel like I've been around people that have that perspective, my way or the highway. And this is what I believe. I feel like I have to, and tell me if I'm wrong, right? Like I felt like I have to be a little bit in between. One, because I'm in a multiracial relationship. I'm going to have multiracial kids, and it's just, I find this divide, which is kind of weird. And that's why I was kind of bringing that up. I don't know if you could talk about that, like internally, what does that look like? How can that improve? And what are you looking to improve as you one day? Because I'm pretty sure one day you're going to run for something, my guy.
Let's hope, fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, I figured, like, dude, bro, like, I swear, I'm like, this guy's going to run for something. I'm pretty sure he's going to be mayor one day. Like, I kid you not. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it.
And once again, the people that were in that day of the Latino Caucus, legit, that's where they were like, that guy's going to be somebody one day, 100%. I mean, he's on that path, so we see it. So once again, I don't know if you can say anything of that.
Well, I pray that your words become reality. I'll say that. But yeah, that's a pretty big issue. That's a pretty big topic you just brought up there. Again, a lot of people tend to check out of politics a lot of the time. Maybe they'll check in once like presidential season sort of is in place, and they feel like it doesn't affect them as much. Unfortunately, especially now more than ever, we see that politics, little by little influence every single part of your life, from like the job that you work, the state that you live, the groceries that you buy, the car that you drive, little by little. It's like in every single thing that you do.
I did not understand that whole, what you just said until until this last two presidencies.
There you go.
I was like, oh,
there you go.
I'm feeling this. And also as an adult now, you know what I mean? Like I got my own place, I'm married, like you start, I don't know, for me, it's like we're trying to get a house, we got to buy groceries all the time. Before it was just like my mom, right? But now like I got to take care of my wife, So it's like conversations are very different. So now, once again, going back to what my grandfather told me, I'm like, yo, no, I gotta get hit. You know what I mean? I really need to understand what's going to happen, or at least just have an understanding.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. And again, to your next point there, I want to touch on, that internal conversation, right? Sure, differences do exist between orgs. Like, I'm not gonna say that we all get along and we're super happy. I mean, in any job, in any field, there's always gonna be, points where, there might be some sort of tension, or maybe not everybody's fully on the same page. Stuff like that, inevitably happens even in like the minute things, like little, or like in some way or form, it's there.
Yeah.
That being said, I think, and what I've seen, especially now, that we're really all being put to the test. I think that overarching sort of
Mm.
demand and mission, is really what is one of those things where it's like that's more important than any difference that might exist between us. Again, the differences that might exist, might be small administrative things, insignificant stuff, but still, like, when you have a mission like what's happening now, where, the goal is protect the community, everybody might, sort of put everything to the side, be like, all right, we need to go, we need to act, we need to do.
Yeah.
And that tends to really, help.
And
Unfortunately,
unite people.
huh?
I was assuming you were going to say unite people.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It really helps unite people, unite groups. It really helps people, see that intersectionality between us. Regardless of who you are, where you come from. It's during these moments of pressure that a lot of eyes are opened. Unfortunately, we wish that it maybe wasn't only during these times, but these times tend to be the ones that put out a lot more of that.
Yeah.
And so, that makes it a lot, a bigger deal, I guess you could say. And, the internal conversations are always there. I guess I can't say for people that have told you, like, immediately, if you want to get into politics, you got to run, you got to, obviously, we want to see more representation of the community.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like at a state level, for example,
They
we
were
only
like,
have.
Frank, we need more people like you on the table.
There
And-
you go.
And I was like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. No, well, I mean, again, it's also like, sort of that byproduct of, like, in that passion, in that,
Yeah.
drive. Sometimes, you might not realize just
Yeah.
how passionate you're being, and it can come off a little bad.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
That's even happened to me at times where, like, I'm so passionate over something, so focused, and then I'm like, oh wait, I said this to somebody incorrectly,
Yeah,
or I might have
yeah.
asked this incorrectly, and then I go back and I'm like, hey,
Yeah, I messed up.
my
Sorry.
bad. I
My tone could have
apologize.
been a little bit
I
different.
apologize.
Yeah.
But people understand that in the heat of the moment, things, things can be a little different.
Would you say that we're the subculture?
A subculture?
Yeah, from like our culture of like, I mean, you're what, Salvadorian?
So
half?
I am half Salvadorian, half Mexican.
Okay.
So I for
Would-
first gen immigrant,
Okay.
I guess, yeah, in a way, I guess you could say. I'm
We're
not.
the subculture of the culture. Would you say that?
I mean, it's weird because, like, especially when you're first gen. Well, I'm assuming you're first gen. I
Yeah.
think you're first gen.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
I think,
first gen.
like, it's very different. The way you grow up, as comparison to, like, your parents that first come here, and as compared to second generations that are already here, that their parents already were here. There's that big difference, that big gap between those three, and then on top of that, you have a very interesting gap that exists with first gens that, like, for example, like you said, may not know Spanish, and don't have the ability to maybe connect as deeply with the community because of that. Obviously there's the ways, but obviously, especially when it comes to, like, residents and people that have immigrated from here, that Spanish is their first language, it's a
Yeah.
lot harder to connect. There's
Yeah.
the ways, there's Google Translate, you can use somebody else, but like that, it's very different from when you actually speak Spanish and you can actually connect. So
Yeah.
that already creates a thing. And then again, when you are second gen, right, and then your parents are already, they're children of immigrants, but they've lived here, they know what things are like here.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you've lived here your whole life, you don't have like that direct connection to, like, necessarily to like where your family originates from.
Yeah.
And it just, little by little, right, it becomes more and more distant.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's been very interesting for me. People have told me that I'm a chameleon. They're like, dude, you can blend in many different areas.
I mean, you're worth the green.
Right. And I don't know, man. I mean, this is my experience, and I am from the 90s. So I grew up within the 90s in Hyattsville, and I feel like in the 90s, like 96 to 2005, Hyattsville wasn't still Latino.
Right.
You know what I mean? There were, for like, in my opinion, I remember, you know, just mostly the black community, not necessarily us. So I really grew up within the black community,
Right.
and you know, I guess hence my wife, right? But I don't know. Sometimes I felt like in the Latino community
Yeah.
last year, because last year I decided to really like, I need to tap it back in.
Right.
I grew up within the Latino community. My dad's a minister. He's very heavy, like going to churches, being in the community. He legit just went to like Colombia, did a tour down there, and ended up in El Salvador, finished his tour in El Salvador, and came back, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in that.
Right.
So I grew up in heavy on the Latino community involved, right? Once I kind of hit 18, 19, it was just like I got extracted and I was just legit just in the American community totally.
Right.
You know, so it's like, I mean, I guess 10 years later, I'm sitting here like, dang, it's been a minute since I've been to a Spanish church, you know, and really talk to la tia, el tío, you know what I mean? And really just connect, and they hit you with the hincho, you know, they hit you with all the time, you know, everything, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, dang, I missed this a little bit, you know, this legit, this is where I grew up, you know?
Right.
Sometimes I tell my wife, I'm like, you see that? You see that? This is the way I am. This is the reason why I am the way I am.
Right.
So, but last year I was really heavy getting involved with the Latino community. Crazy enough, one lady kind of threw me off because I was telling her about the politics and what I've been learning, and I'm like, you know, I want to fight more. I want to be there. Like, I'm seeing the work, I'm seeing the help or the need, and I'm seeing people like you doing the work and really be involved. And I'm like, yo, like I would love, like once you said, you're like, dude, you're in the room, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna fight. You know, yeah, you're right. That passion definitely gets pushed over. But then, unfortunately, that lady, Latina, she's from El Salvador, she looked at me and she said, you're not Latino.
Really?
She's like, you're American. You're not one of us. And that Joan hit. It hurt. It hurt because I was like, but I look like you. And I'm not a no sabo kid. Estoy hablando español. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and maybe I might forget one word here or there, but come on now. Like, you know, I'm speaking English every single day. I have to rewind my brain in seconds, you know? So it kind of hurt. But then I jump into other communities and I'm not American there. I'm Latino. I'm Hispanic, you know? So it's this weird feeling as when I jump into the community. I mean, I'm in all types. I mean, everywhere. As much as you're in the different events, I am in different events. I'm in different in my world, and I've been trying to reduce and like I guess niche down in the worlds that I kind of want to make sure I put my hands and my time into.
Right.
But have you experienced something like that? As much as like you've been heavy in the community, very a lot more involved with the Latino community. As someone as first gen, have you ever felt like that?
Well, I mean, man, that's such a complex issue that unfortunately does exist in the community. You know, that again, it's that disconnect between, you know, the immigrant generation and the first generation that was born here. You know, to a degree, I guess, you know, because you'll meet someone that's like Latino that immigrated, and they'll be like, oh, you know, where are you from? And you know, you tell them, oh, well, I'm half Salvadorian, half Latino. Oh, sorry, half Salvadorian, half Mexican. And they'll be like, oh, so you were born here? And you're like, well, yeah, but I'm half Salvadorian,
I'm
half
still
Mexican.
Latino, you know.
And they're like, yeah, but you were born here. And you're like, okay, but you know, you know, we so there is
Yeah.
always that thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I guess in a way I could say I my situation is a little weird because I also grew up a church kid, and you know, when you're in church, especially in the
I'm
Latino
that
church,
PK, that pastor's kid.
there you go. Well, I wasn't a pastor's kid, but when you're in a Spanish church, you know, you tend to read the Bible.
Yeah.
And the Spanish that's in the Bible, it's a lot, I guess, thicker, a lot more, I guess, complex.
Okay.
And inevitably, one way or another, you tend to, like, your Spanish level kind of benefits from that.
Yeah.
And so, like growing up, that was something that I always got complimented on, that although I was born here, you know, there was this, you know, hablabas bien el español.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay, well, I appreciate that. And a lot of the times
And
it
they
was,
look at you like, oh,
yeah,
ya te puede hablar, mira.
they'd be so shocked. And it was, again, because of that exposure. But again, there's situations that happen where a child may not get that luxury nowadays. There's parents, from my experience in the community, what I've talked with other people that may not speak English despite being first gen. They're like, oh well, my parents didn't want me to what do you say, they were ashamed of Spanish and they wanted me to just learn English.
Yeah.
And they just do it that way. But again, it creates this division where like the immigrant generation with the first gen sort of become disconnected because their life here and your life there is so much different, and it creates that. But again, in my opinion, again, ultimately we're all part of the Latino community. I think there shouldn't be a division there.
No.
Are the struggles different? Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't compare my struggles to the struggles of somebody that came over here from a country in Latin America. I mean, I don't know if you've seen, hell, like even like the movies or like shows that'll show like what crossing like the border or like the Rio Grandes and like how intense.
Debajo la misma luna. That
there
one
you
was
go.
huge.
There
I
you
remember
go.
when it came out.
How many
People
tears
were crying, bro.
Right, because of that movie. Like it's you see that, like, and I recognize that that's impactful. Again, with my family from El Salvador as well, with my dad being from the 70s, you had the Civil War, and there was movies that came out because of that as well. And the movies around that were very, very graphic and very intense. So you see that journey. But again, like my story here is very different because, again, you grew up in this system, in this country, very different. And again, that unfortunately does create that disconnect. But I feel like, now more than ever, I think it's really important to, again, recognize that, we're, as part of the Latino community, we are all one community. Again, there's multiple, again, like, I guess you could say subcultures, I would say we're like multiple communities in one, which makes it a very unique community.
So you
to
wouldn't
be a part
call
of.
it like a subculture?
I wouldn't say like a subculture because I feel like that's a little too divides it a little bit too much. But I feel like it's different communities that make up the Latino community.
Excellent. I like that. Okay.
So it's something like that. And again, you'll even see it. Back in the day, I remember because I'm half Mexican, half Salvadorian. The big thing is
Like,
a
they can't be
Mexican and a
together.
Salvadorian can't see each other because they will literally even
They'll
try,
fight.
even kill each other. Like it was like that was like
I
the
do remember that.
stereotype. Yeah. Again, nowadays you don't see that as much. You don't hear that as much. If anything, now it's a lot more common to see somebody that's half Mexican, half Salvadorian.
Yeah.
But for a long time, like, again, that was like, oh, they hate each other.
thing.
Like they literally, especially here in the area where those were like two big like groups. Like, well, I can't say for all of Maryland.
Park. Just saying.
There you go. But like in like Hyattsville, the Riverdale area again, where there's a big Mexican community and there's a big Salvadorian community. Again, there's
You could tell the difference. You're just like, whoa.
again, and again, I wasn't there in the 90s. I was there in the early 2000s. So it's a little bit different, but it was definitely, again, a lot more Latino presence when I was growing up. But again, there was still that tension. Again, unfortunately, nowadays, it's not as common. It's a lot more like, slowly but surely, our community is becoming more accepting of each other, and I think that's a good thing.
That is a really good thing, and I think personally, I don't think it's not just our community, but all communities are being a little bit more accepting with each other.
Yeah.
Because I do remember growing up with. I feel like there was way too much division. Yeah. It was like, oh, we work harder. They don't work hard. It was just like a lot. And it was like, growing up, I think definitely has changed a lot. Yeah. If anything, I guess, once again, to close it out, I feel like a pastor. I keep saying I'm going to close it out, right?
We're like the two aunts at the end of the party. They're like, we're about to go.
Ya me voy, tía. Ah, pero mire. Well, if there's anything, I'm really proud of my Latino community.
Absolutely.
I'm like extremely proud, because growing up, legit, one, touching on the thing about immigration.
Right.
I got here through my mom's belly, through the Rio Grande. I wasn't made here. I was made in El Salvador, so, and that's a whole different story, which is kind of insane. But that, now seeing my wife, she's 8 months pregnant, 7, 8.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And we're about to expect in a couple weeks. I'm like, Ma, you went to the Rio Grande like this? Yeah. Yo, my wife sometimes can barely get out the freaking bed, and I have to help her out, your sister, And then you had to be in a truck and then you had to swim across. And then she has a story where there was no food, there was nothing, and she was like really hungry. I mean, she's feeding two.
Right.
And then I guess El Coyote or somebody was like, hey, come here. Took her away from the entire group and was like, I'm only doing this because you are pregnant. Gave her extra food, gave her extra water. You got this. You just got to keep pushing. We're almost there. It's such a crazy story, dude. Like, I just, it makes me really, really proud of my mom first. And then two, also it makes me sad for all the people that's going through all these like immigration situations right now, because it makes me think of my parents,
Absolutely.
my uncles, my aunts. And one part of my family got here, I guess legally. And then the other part, they kind of made themselves, come in and, gladly my mom now got papers and we've gone through that entire process, right? But I'm once again, I'm really, really proud of my community. We started all my family when they got here. I'm pretty sure you've heard the stories. It's like you get an apartment and everyone's living in an apartment.
There
And
you
it's
go.
just like a 2-bedroom apartment and there's like 14 people in there.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's how we started. Because I'm the first generation, I got to see my parents struggle. And one of the things I talked to my wife about is recently we did a Build-A-Bear.
Yeah.
And she was like, we were just talking about gifts. And I was like, I didn't grow up with many gifts. I didn't grow up with a lot of things, because even my clothes, I have a hard time buying clothes. And that's just not because I don't like to buy clothes. It's just because I remember growing up, my parents would tell me, sorry, we don't have enough money. You ask for one thing
Right.
in that year, and that's all you're asking for. And I mean, I would only ask for clothes, or I would only ask for certain clothes. And if they would give me shoes, this is the shoes you're going to have for the rest of the year.
Right.
And legit, it was just one pair. And it was a Shaq shoes, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even the nice shoes. So it was,
You had to get them a size bigger because then your foot would grow and then they wouldn't
yeah,
fit.
son, I remember one time they got me really good dope shoes, and it literally only lasted me like six months, I think, because I outgrew them so quick, and they were like $150, and I was so sad, bro. I was like, man, but I'm proud of them because now each one has their own home, each one has their own cars, they have businesses, they are thriving. And it's just, and that's just my family. That's a bunch of Latinos, man, so many that came here with nothing, and now they are established. So it just fills me with pride. And it's like, man, we've done it. We've gotten there, and we're just gonna continue growing. And man, dude, thank you for coming, bro.
No, of course, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, man, I've had a lot of fun. This is my first podcast that I'm doing here, that I'm doing with you,
Yeah.
to launch this. I have a lot of guests, which I'm really excited about. I want to talk to more guests. If there's more people like decision makers in the city, I mean, if they're, or I guess in Maryland, that are down to have a conversation and share their thoughts, their anger, whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
dude, I want to talk about it. I want to hear it. And I'm not one of those who's like, I'm on this side, forget you, blah, blah. Like,
Right.
nah, I literally, I need to hear everyone, in my opinion,
That's right. That's right.
and besides of my beliefs or what my views are, I think it's always good to listen to people, you know what I mean, without anything, or I guess no judgment or whatever, But thank you, bro. Now, for people that are out there that just got to learn about the Latino Caucus, that they just learned that they can have a voice, that they can go ahead and fight, because I know a lot of people who just, you're talking about a bunch of stuff, right? But you're not active in the community, dude. Like, you can get active in the community. And that's something that I'm striving for and pushing for myself, being more active in the community. Where could they find your organization? Where can they find you? Where can they find to be part of it?
Absolutely. Well, to find the Latino Caucus, thankfully you don't have to go too far. You don't have to go all the way to Annapolis. You can just look us up online. We have a website. We have social media, Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus, or MD Latino Caucus. We have Facebook. We have Instagram. We have LinkedIn for our professionals. And I want to say we have something else, but I feel like I'm missing. Well,
Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok.
We do not have TikTok. Oh, we have our YouTube, or we do our.
Bro, a lot of Latinos are on TikTok. It's crazy.
I know we gotta expand. We gotta do a little bit. Again, we're working on it, and we're trying to sort of expand our reach. But our social media is out there. Again, Maryland Legislative Latino Caucus or MD Latino Caucus, and all of our stuff for the most part is English and Spanish, so people can access it and read it. Again, sometimes you just gotta swipe though, or you gotta extend the description to be able to see the Spanish part. Because I did get that from some people that said that they didn't know that there was a Spanish part. I'm like, no, you just gotta swipe. So we do try to expand on that language access. Feel free to reach out through there. We also have on all of our social media, we have a link tree. That link tree is constantly updated depending on the season and what's coming up. So for example, right now we have our volunteer form pretty much for people to sign up if they want to be volunteers. We are mobilizing. Again, we're trying to do town halls, listening sessions, be around the community, be present at events by tabling. And again, all of that requires manpower. So the more people that join, the more people that are involved, the better. And then, of course, that link updates constantly as like the seasons are changing. For example, around like the September, October time, we tend to link the General Assembly's internship and fellowship programs that students can apply to, so that then they can participate for the session, which is like 3 months. They get paid. It's a really good program. It's a really great way to get involved.
Okay.
So again, please feel free to get connected. And again, MD Latino Caucus.
Hey, man, thank you very much. And now we're just going to close it out here, man, dude.
All right.
Thank you so much, bro, for coming. And yeah, dude, man, I can't wait to have you again. I can't wait to talk about it. I think give it a couple months.
I appreciate
You're going to be
it.
like, this is what happened. We threw this bill out there. We got it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everything's under control.
I appreciate the open dialogue. Again, there was a couple questions where I'm like, "Ooh, well, this is hot water," but we got to give a response.
Yeah. I was also like, wait, hold on, Frank. Yeah, it can't go too deep. But all right, man. I guess let's just take these headphones off, or else we're not getting out of here.